praise the Lord, everybody. Welcome to Breakthrough Now. I'm so glad you're with us on the podcast today. I think you're going to be blessed. I've got Chuck Price with us on the podcast. He is the executive director for Reapers in the Rain International, and he's going to be sharing with us his heart for missions. You can catch us on iTunes, this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, and we're thankful. So we're going to go to this interview right now with Chuck that's already in progress. Yep.
I've been on the road now for 17 years. Before that, I pastored for 24. But in the 17 years, you know, I've learned. When I first started, I was bouncing all over the place. I was in Uganda 1 month, Romania the next month, then I'd be over in Estonia. And then I ran into a Baptist retired sergeant in the Ukraine who moved his whole family over there, 11 kids, by the way, and he was just working for Jesus. And he said to me one night, "Do you ever feel like a shotgun?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, you go into a country and a shotgun scatters pellets all over the place and hopefully you hit something." I was like, I knew what he meant. And he really spoke into my heart. And he said, "I used to be a sharpshooter." He said, "I'd sit in a tree for 2 days and wait for my one kill, you know, sometimes 3 days. And I'd wait, one shot, one kill." And I got what he meant. And it really changed the course of Reapers in the Rain International, where it wasn't about going here, going here, going here. See, like 46 countries later, I'm like, okay, I get it. So I go now into a country for 5 or 6 years, now Cuba for the last 7, 8 years. Wow. And I just build base, build relationship, and do the brick and mortar. And honestly, Pastor, I fought the humanitarian end of it.
Yeah.
I really did, because I was an evangelist. I'm a preacher. It's all about souls. And because there's a lot of great groups out there that are non-Christian that are doing humanitarian aid, or care aid. And they have money. They actually have lots of money. They're doing quite well. So I thought, well, let them do that, but they're not going to win anyone to Jesus. So I'll do that. But then I found this 30, 70, 60, 40 balance of winning people to Jesus. Yeah. So now we do a lot of humanitarian during the day so I can preach Jesus at night. Yeah, it's like earning the right to cross the bridge into their hearts.
Right.
Now they see something physically. They see the walls going up. They see the well. They see the distribution of things. And so that night I feel like they come to listen. Like, okay, Chuck, you're not just here for a one-off.
That's good.
Get your pictures and run home. And so it's taken me a journey to learn that, but I've learned. And so now I just concentrate on a certain country. That doesn't mean we don't visit other places, but Honduras, and then I've been to the Ukraine 9 times, and so on, Trinidad, Tobago 20. But God has just built such great relationship. And I believe that's part of the Great Commission.
Yeah, I do.
Is that we earn right, and we build bridges, not walls.
Yeah, I think what you said there is key, because, you know, some people just do the building of the homes or whatever, because missions is more than buildings and whatever. And you've combined the two, because I remember taking a girl from our church to Guatemala, and she was kind of upset when she found out the missions trip didn't involve at this time building something, which in the past we have done that. But what changed it all for her is when she had prayed with a young girl on the mission field that was during a crusade we had no eye, was born that way. And when she laid hands on it, she watched an eye developed in front of her own eyes. And when that forever changed her life.
Absolutely.
And she realized, okay, missions is more than just building a home or whatever, even though that's part of it. And what we've done in Guatemala is so many people live in the rural areas in huts or whatever. We've helped establish stoves where we go into the homes and we build a stove for that family, because some of the smoke that they were breathing was causing all sorts of medical issues. And so Reapers in the Rain. So tell us more about what you do and where else do you do it? Or is it right now just primarily Cuba?
Well, again, 46 countries over the last 17 years. And we do a combination of things. We go in, I take a lot of teams. Obviously, the last few years I have not, but I've literally taken hundreds of men and women over the years. Take a team of 10 or 12. It's easier to travel with in van space. It's not just air transportation. You know this. It's land transportation. It's also food. It's accommodations. It's all that. So a team of 10, 11, 12 would be my max. I take builders. I'm not a great builder, but I'm smart enough to surround myself. It's pretty simple build. It's brick, mortar, rebar. It's cement. It's gruntwork. It's 50-pound bags of cement. We have sewing centers now in Cuba that we've developed. We've got a fishing boat. and we've also got a hair salon. And so now we feed those. There's a container on its way this week to Cuba, 40-foot container with humanitarian food and also tables, chairs, crutches, wheelchairs, a lot of great stuff, medicines, vitamin C, things that Cuba can't get. The pharmacies are empty. They're empty. They're sending me pictures of the government pharmacies that are usually stocked.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's not a case of having money. It's a case there's nothing to buy. So we're doing that. And so we work during the day, and then we have services at night. Also, we run a 2.5-day pastors conference.
Okay.
Why? Because I want to strengthen the leaders that are already there. I can't do a lot of evangelism in Cuba because obviously the culture, the government is not in favor of that. And so if I can strengthen the leaders that are there by loving them, encouraging them, blessing them with stuff, and spending 2.5 days just pouring into them. So I'll bring teachers better than myself, men that have that gift. I'm an evangelist that tries to teach, and God's blessed me. I'm okay. But we bring other pastors, and you know what? A lot of times when they come back to Canada, I'm laughing already because I know the punchline. We get back 1 week, Saturday to Saturday. So we get back Saturday. They're usually in their pulpit again Sunday morning. Yeah. And normally Sunday afternoon, I get a call from the pastor saying, "Can we go back to Cuba?" That's not a shot at their church. Oh, they're great guys with great churches, but it's so free there. It's so free. It's the supernatural so easy. So is the demonic, you know, because it's in your face. So there's no guesswork. It's you know, sometimes the demonic here in Canada is polite and conservative. Over there, it's like you know what's going on. So deal with it quickly. But the pastors' conferences are key, and just taking them away for 2.5 days. One pastor said to me, "Chuck, don't announce what you're going to speak on. Just announce the menu." Because they're so hungry. That's physically and spiritually. He goes, "Yeah, just tell us what we're going to eat," you know. And so we bless them and we give them stuff to take home and notes and all that good stuff. So again, there's that balance that I'm trying to find, that it's taken me years to develop. Yes, we've worked in other countries, but right now, I don't know if I have the capacity to love 10 countries in 1 year. Right. And so I'm just focused and honed in on this container. I just came back a week ago from Cuba. You know, COVID has taken its toll with sicknesses, like those with sugar diabetes have struggled, and COVID, and then heart disease. And we said goodbye to some pretty cool people. But you know what? The church is strong. God's moving. They worship. There's not an eye open during worship. They're praising. They come an hour early. Yeah. Service at 8 o'clock Sunday night. They're there at 7 o'clock, and they walk, and they take public transportation or those little pedal rickshaws, and there's no parking lot. There's no cars. Right. So it's just all about sanctuary. Pack them in, love on them, encourage them. And again, trying to find that balance. So Reapers has developed a side that teaches. Yeah. I have 4 E's that I like to talk about. Equip, that we want to equip leaders, equip people. We want to encourage. Yeah. You know, we want to evangelize, and we want to empower. That's good. Like those are, and I've really stayed with those over the 4. Now they've developed. I don't have a set pattern. I don't have a set. This is what we do, and if you can't fit into that box, we're not coming. We'll roll. I'll bring people that have certain skill sets to fit the need, and that's really what we've defined. We have a warehouse here in Ontario, and we ship things, we pack things. We work with the street ministries, number in Toronto, a number in Oshawa, storefronts. So we haven't neglected our own. Because of the number of refugees that have come into our country, and God bless them. And that's how a lot of our families came. My grandparents came from Ireland for a better life, and Wales. I get it. And but it's pushed the street people out. The homeless are out because the shelters are full. Right. And so that's left a crisis on the street. So we've 10 sleeping bags, ground sheets, survival kits, knapsacks. That's really good. I just last Sunday, I spoke at a homeless shelter in the afternoon and just loved on them, blessed them, preached Jesus, had altar call. And I love that. You know what, Pastor? It keeps me honest. Yes. Doing things like that just keeps me honest. Sometimes the church can be a bit of a fishbowl, but I like getting out where it's raw. It's just raw. You don't know what's going to happen. And street preaching and all that stuff goes along with it. I don't mind that. I don't need a pulpit to preach. No. But it's like the old saying, see a need, meet a need.
Yeah.
And so that's really who we are. And
Oh, that's awesome.
I have some good folks that love us and support us, and monthly partners that allow me to go to some of the smaller places and not worry about finances. It's
Yeah.
just such a non-issue, and I'm very thankful.
No, that's really good. Hey, can you think of, again, we've gone over there and helped in the building, like, Guatemala's had some major, you know, slides, kill people, wiped out 5 villages, the big one.
Yeah.
And not only did we help supply financially, but we helped in housing and getting people into housing, because I think there was 12,000 displaced people, as well as thousands that were killed. And so we did our best to try to help wherever we could. But we've also seen some tremendous miracles in doing that. And so is there anything that stands out to you in their time in, say, Cuba,
Absolutely.
in regards to healings, deliverance, whatever?
Yeah, I can just pick a country. I can see the supernatural. I mean, the gifts of the Spirit are an evangelist's best tool. Like the gifts of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit also, but it's like a great tool. And so we've been purchasing houses in Cuba through the Assemblies of God, and they're owned by the pastor. But there's a little side note that says, that they won't stay there forever. They belong to the assemblies. So the pastor moves into the house, they live there, and then we hollow out the front, and that becomes a sanctuary. That's another great way to reach Cuba, because it's all about sustainable development. Right. So I don't necessarily like to feed people. There are other organizations that do that, but I like to get the fishing boat, they can fish. The sewing center, they sew. And the hair salon. And so they're always generating income. The houses, people are meeting there. I spoke in one or two last week, and those are houses that Reapers has purchased. And now they're sustainable, they're running, the church is meeting, the pastor has a place to live. That's a miracle in Cuba. So, that's a miracle. It's not a healing, it's a miracle in Cuba that we were allowed to do this, because I just go as a tourist, but have we seen eyes open? Yeah, I'm thinking there's one especially in Ukraine. And we went there early, years ago, and then I've gone back since. But, we were denied access to a building after we had tried to rent it. People had lined up. We had a band with us. We had music. We had a pastor and his wife that were willing to stay in the village after we left, after the new converts, because we were seeing 700-800 people come to Jesus Christ over a 3-course, nights. And they would just stay and pastor this. We'd rent a building for them. It was that easy then. Wow. But the police of the day, I don't know what we call them today, but the special police, they weren't going to allow us in the building. And so, after the hemming and hawing and what are we going to do, we just began to lay hands on people that had already lined up, and a man's back straightened right up. Like just boom, like he was all straightened up. An ear opened. There was a touch in an eye. There was really some phenomenal things that took place. And then when the people saw that, they went to those soldiers that night and said, no, 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 no. We don't care what you said. We are having church. Like we're having church. And so because God showed up in the lineup, like he showed up, we didn't get going yet. And because we decided, we didn't just throw our hands up and go, oh, well, so sad, too bad. We just started praying for people. Like if we can't get in, God can work on the outside too. But that. And we had a powerful night, and they opened the doors for us. Wow. The soldiers were overwhelmed by the people and what they saw, that we had church that night. I don't know how many hundreds gave their heart to Jesus Christ. And then we introduced the pastor and his wife to the congregation and said, we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We'd like you to meet your new pastor. Hundreds of people showed up, and we rented an opera house in that town, a small opera house, because no one had money to go to the opera. So it was sitting empty. We rented it for a year for, I think, a few microphones, some stands, and some cords. I mean, it was like crazy. And they started church. We gave them all Bibles, and they started church. So healing, miracle, miracle, miracle. That's amazing. Pastor, it's easier. Unfortunately, I see it, my opinion, it seems to be easier overseas than it is in my own nation.
I agree 100%. I mean, I pastor here, traveled all over the place, and just seen, and I'm thankful that so has our church, but seen tremendous miracles. And we get home, and it's like, okay, a lot of people don't even want to come to church. So let me ask you a couple more questions. How did God call you from pastoring? I know you pastored for a number of years, to missions, where you walked away from, really the security of salary, all that stuff, and transition into.
Yeah, that was a concern with some of my buddies. I was 48 years of age. We had 3 children. We had 3 children in college out west, training for ministry in Bible college. And yeah, we went from a good church, and they blessed us and they took good care of us, to zero. And my first 2 missions events were, I had to raise $10,000 to go to Uganda, and I think 8,000 to go to the Ukraine. But here's my sob story: God's faithful.
Yeah.
So years ago, I said to my wife, I said, we're not always going to pastor. We're not always going to pastor. I have a heart for evangelism. And that just grew. That just grew in the 24 years of pastoring. I didn't leave pastoring because I didn't like it. I didn't leave pastor because I thought I was a bad pastor or I had to. Well, I did have to, because God was stirring my heart for evangelism. But every time I went on a mission trip as a pastor, I came back and people would say to me, Chuck, you're different. You're different. We can always tell when you've been away on a mission trip, because you come back with a new fire, a new passion, and that's true. But that should be the norm, because you see great things happen in a short period of time. Where sometimes pastoring is like sculpturing. You keep molding and shaping and molding and shaping. Yeah. I think I see something. And then you get a breakthrough. You go molding and shaping. That's my story. And then, so I told Trish years ago that we would not always pastor. And so when baby girl went off to college, and it was just Trish and I said to her, I believe the time's now. The kids have grown. They're going to have their own lives. They're going into whatever they're going to do in life. And so I resigned in 2005. In my church, and my last Sunday pastoring was actually Christmas morning. It fell on December 25th. So I just preached Jesus, loved people, and went home. And it was like kind of hid myself in Christmas, and it was like, you're done. It was a great way to conclude. Yeah. And then 2 weeks later, I hit the road. A pastor friend of mine took me on, put me on their books, gave me a little office. They ran our finances until I got our charitable and our tax stuff taken care of. It took 4 or 5 years, and we've been up and running. But I always had a heart. My father was a pastor, but he was an evangelist.
Right.
But because he had good people around him, he could pastor and still be that. He was an evangelist. Right. I mean, he traveled, and he did outreach, and he did door to door, and he did outdoor services. Yeah. That was part of the 60s and 70s. So I grew up with that. That was in my blood. So it wasn't new to me when I stepped down in 2006, January 1, and we've never looked back. And it's been 17 years. It's been great. I've loved it.
So tell me how it changed you. Like, okay, so you pastored, and I know what that's like. And I always feel freer when I'm on the road, and it's like, yes, why can't I do this forever? And yet the call to pastor is still there for me. But how did it change you?
It was, well, so Trish and I get married. We finish college, and we go into ministry. I work as an educator in Montreal, and then I'm working in the church, but also in group homes with young men and young women. And then God releases it from that. We go into pastoring, from youth pastoring to assistant pastoring to senior pastoring. Mm-hmm. And so that was a development in our hearts and our lives. And then the burden began to shift. Like the burden for pastoring just began to shift. And I felt that. And it became a release till I couldn't do it anymore and be faithful to the call that was on my life for evangelism. Right. Could I have stayed on and pastored and done some evangelism? I think so. I think the church and the people around me would have allowed that. But for me, just for me, I felt I needed to cut tie, because I'm not sure I would have done one or the other better. And so I just needed to focus and concentrate on evangelism, on traveling as a missionary evangelist. And so for me, the burden shifted, the burden lifted, and I made a choice to cut ties with pastoring and just to concentrate on evangelism. But in all our lives, there's burdens that shift. Yeah. They're for a season. They're for a season. Yeah. And if we could just speak to people too that have a call of God on their lives, and they're finished their 25 years, they got their career in, they've raised their family, and now there's an open door for them. Yeah. Because that call of God on our lives when we were 13, 14, 15, that doesn't go away because we move on and do something else. But there's a great opportunity right now for our baby boomer generation to rise up, because they've got a trade. They've
Yes.
got a trade. They've got a career. Their family's older. Maybe their wife wants them out of the house a couple of weeks a year. And so it's a great opportunity now. The call of God is still inside. It still
Yeah.
burns like a fire. God didn't change his mind because you went on and did something else. So,
Right.
so sir, ma'am, I encourage you today, when the opportunity comes for third day to travel and to be involved in ministry and to take a week or two, go.
Yeah.
Go. It will change your life.
Yeah.
I still get calls from team members saying, Chuck, when are we going? When are we going? When are the bans lifted? When are the restrictions lifted? And we've got older. Those bags of cement are hevier now than they were 17 years ago. The rebar.
Do you know what stands out to me, Chuck? When we were in Guatemala, and one of the first times I was there, this is what changed me dramatically. And I actually told God, there's two things I wouldn't do. I won't go to a third world country, and I won't go to Africa.
How did that work?
Not very good. So here I am in Guatemala, and I don't want to be there. And I scheduled only 5 days the first time. I want to get in there and get out of there. And actually, truth, I gave up a trip to Hawaii because my wife and I always wanted to go to Hawaii. Still never been to Hawaii. And I went to Guatemala. And when I landed, I thought, I am in a third world country. And so, but I was in this guy's yard, basically it was a chicken coop where they lived. Their little brick home, tin roof, 2 little rooms where they slept. Everything else was outdoors. And he said to me, everything I have is yours.
Yeah.
And I looked, and he meant it with all humility and all. And I looked at, and I told my wife after, and then of course the people, they were all happy. In abject poverty. I mean, then we went around to the out in the bush to where people lived. They were all happy, welcoming, never asked me for anything. And I said to my wife when we were flying home, I said, when we get home, this is before we established things in Guatemala. I said, and I'll tell you how that happened. I said, we will never complain again about what we have or don't have. Because what changed me on that trip is as I was leaving, we were going out for supper the night before. We were there with a local missionary who's a Canadian, been there for many, many years, Kim Wheeler. And we saw a little boy across the street. And you probably have seen kids like this in Cuba. He didn't see us, we saw him. About 9 o'clock at night, he was crying, and he had all of his candy and stuff that he'd been selling out in front of him, but he was weeping. So we came up kind of on the side of him, and through our interpreter asked what was wrong with him. And he said, and he was about 9 years old. And he said, I've lost some of my money. And if I don't bring the right money home, my papa I'll be in trouble. Like, he'll probably get a beating. And so we just simply gave him any money we had left in Casales, which was probably triple what he lost. And then he took off. Well, I got home to Canada, and God woke me up and said, I want you to do more for Guatemala. And then he told me to watch Oliver Twist. And I'd never watched Oliver Twist. And I watched the movie Oliver Twist, and I preached 4 sermons on that. And it's how God got in my heart for Guatemala. And to make a long story short, we bought a children's home and blah, blah, blah. And that's what the beginning was. And it just was so easy. And then since then, we've morphed into the Philippines, and then just recently into Africa the last few years, and helping again with children, all with children, helping pastors there with children. But it absolutely changed our life and the life of our church. And people that have went will never, ever be the same again. So one more question for you. How can people help you? How can they get a hold of you? How can they send money to you? How can they do all that?
Well, thank you. Reapers in the Rain is www.reapersintherain.org. We have a website. There's a couple of buttons there, one for Canada Helps. We also have a UPS box in Bowmanville. There's addresses there. If it's still snail mail, there's Interact, at CP Price at reapersintherain.org. There's a couple of, all the information's there under contact information. Okay. We appreciate that. Prayer support. And I know we always talk about the finance and the prayer support. Well, that's 2 of the biggest things in missions is prayer covering and dollars to go and make a difference. The beautiful thing about, our dollar in many countries, it actually makes a difference.
It does.
And I'm thankful for that. And it's an investment. You're not just giving, you're investing. I mean, the houses and the people's lives and the investment in pastors and leadership, and like just this container alone was $100,000, some great stuff, and shipping it. it'll be there, this weekend. And then we need prayer that they'll be kind to us, and all the paperwork and the government officials, because they'll want everything on it. And so we just need to be praying and believing God for favor. And so that's what we need, is prayer and the finances to go. Would I love for people to come with me? Yes, but not yet.
Right.
I'm hoping to take some teams back in the autumn, Pastor. Right now it would be impossible for me to take teams to Cuba. For one, accommodations. For one is food.
Right.
Just food, to get food. I stayed at one place in January. I had 2 meals there that week. Just because of the circumstances, situation. So we had to scrounge around when we traveled. I have a translator and a driver. We have a van. And so we work during the day. We have job sites, and then we have service at night, pastors conference. They're so desperate to get back together for pastors conferences. Everywhere I went last week, they asked me, when are we going to do pastors conference? When are we going to do?
Wow.
They're asking for medicines, for vitamins. It's not just about COVID, but rice fills your belly,
Right.
but it doesn't really help your immune system.
No, it doesn't.
So you can go to bed and your belly's like, wow, man, my belly's full, but you're not building up anything. And that's a big issue there right now. So would I love to take some folk with me? Yeah. In the autumn. Yeah. And you don't have to be skilled labor, just a willing heart.
Right.
We can find something to do. You got to be a team player and love Jesus. And we'll take good care of you, and I'll get you home. And it's all good. But the dollars, of course, are the big thing in finances. And I don't apologize for that. They're not going in my pocket. And so you can go to our website at www.reaperstherain.org. We have a Facebook site. I'm on Instagram. I'm not hard to find, and all my information's there. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and thanks, Chuck, for coming on and spending a few minutes with us, and just taking the time, because I think it's so important. It's the heartbeat of our church, and we're always attracted to missionaries and people who are working in countries, whether it's the same country as us, doesn't matter, because our heart has grown to other countries. And he said, go into all the world. And well, we can't go to every place. We can go to some places, and we can go there and do things well. And we've done that in the places that and yet the need is still great. So as you know, Cuba. So again, thanks so much for coming on, spending a few minutes with us today, and blessing us.
Yeah, pleasure is mine. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it. Appreciate your heart.
Bless you.
Yeah. God bless.
Amen.